Awesome to welcome Stefan Weissenboeck to the Basketball Podcast. Stefan Weissenboeck has been doing player development for Brose Bamberg since 2008. With Bamberg Club, Stefan has been part of 7 German League and 5 German Cup championships. From 2018 to 20, he worked for the Brooklyn Nets, visiting them once a month with special tasks mostly on shooting. Stefan has worked with EuroLeague, NBA, and youth players from all over the world, including NBA players Maxi Kleberg, PJ Tucker, Jacob Portal, and Daniel Theus. Stefan, welcome to the Basketball Podcast.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Excited to talk to you, and so many places we can go. I wanted to start with something that I got from one of your previous podcasts, and that was that you broke basically development down into the work, the trust, the patience. Can you talk to us a little bit about how those three things intersect?
Well, first, the work, we have to do something, right? If we want to change, if we want to improve, then we have to do something. So there has to be work at some point. We can't just talk about it. We have to do something. The trust is, or might be, a point that we forget sometimes. How is our connection to the player? How do we see him? Do we really believe in what we teach? Have we just talked to somebody else and said, yeah, man, that player is never going to get it, and then we go into a workout? Do we really trust that work? Do we trust the improvement that we're looking for? And the other way around, does he trust me, or does he feel it anyway that I'm maybe not really believing in him anymore, maybe? Or does he really believe, wow, that guy thinks I'm good, and I'm going to listen to it, and he knows what he's talking about. So that's the trust aspect. And the third, yeah, the patience. It's not going to come quickly. Sometimes it does, but most of the times not. Or sometimes it comes quickly and then it goes away again, the improvement or the goal or whatever we've been working on. Without that patience, without that perseverance of putting in the work again and again, not only for days or weeks, but for months and years and the whole career. I think there's so many out there who proved that the patience is such an important factor. And these three things are important. I think they're simple enough. I like the number of three. I stole that from Gordy Herbert from your home country. He's big on never more than three things, and these are three things that I definitely believe in.
I love it. And, since 2008, you've been with Bamberg. And so you've been through different staffs, you've been through different situations. So I'm a little bit curious, first of all, give us an impression of kind of what is your role on a daily basis within the team? And specifically, is there a distinction between being an assistant coach and being a player development coach?
My role over the years has changed, and it actually changes with every head coach. Like every head coach has a different philosophy, a different approach to individual development. Is there a difference? To be honest, the title is the big difference, and it sounds different. But when I started working for the pro team here under Chris Fleming, which was by far my most important time, my title was a normal assistant coach. But of course, the big passion that I had for helping players get better or develop or add stuff to their bag, how it's called, I used to do them back then already, and Coach Fleming brought me in mostly or mainly to do that. But of course, we played EuroLeague back then for 4 or 5 years in a row with a staff of only 3 coaches, like 2 assistants and the head coach. So there was a lot else to do too. Game prep, a lot of film, pre-game, post-game, whatever, which changed later. And you talked about, or you asked about the difference. For me, the difference came when I first got fired from Bamberg with Coach Fleming and Arne Woodman, and then hired again with the new staff of Andrea Trinchieri. And then I became a player development coach only. And the difference for me was that I had a lot more time, a lot more energy, of course, to think only development, think only individually for the player. And it for me was a game changer, because I had so much more potential and capacity to really dive into that almost exclusively. And I loved it.
And I think you also referenced a little bit the difference in the relationship between an assistant coach and a player development coach for the player from their perspective, especially coming back to that second piece you talked about, the trust.
Yes, and I think it can be a delicate thing. Every coach likes to be close to the players, likes to be understood by the players. I think there's a very, very thin line where we sometimes, not because we want to do bad things, but we are sometimes tempted to use it a little bit because we enjoy it. We enjoy the trust of the player, but it must never go against the head coach. It must never go against the team tactics. It must never go against the team. For example, oh yeah, he's angry that he game or I didn't get the ball much, and then he comes talk to me. If I'm an assistant or a play development coach, that doesn't matter. But that trust thing in these situations is very delicate, because I think our duty is to help the player in that situation, in the system, to function in the team, instead of, well, if it would be my decision, you would play more. And we've all heard it. We've all been there. So the trust thing must never be abused or misused. Is that the right word? Misused?
Yeah.
Because it can be a thin line.
And saying that, I mean, you're fully integrated as if you're obviously a member of the staff. So you do have some input and you do have some say, don't you?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Yeah. Yeah. So let's take a player who's not getting the ball much and he's not happy about it. So what are we going to do? Yeah, I know that's bad for you, and I would run plays for you, or say, good. Yeah, maybe hard for you, but you know what? If you run the break well, you're going to have 1 or 2 open shots more. And if we're going to work on them, catch and shoot 3 out of a full sprint. I'm making that up now, but it can be a common situation. What if you get 2 shots more? And what if you make at least 1 more out of that? Then that's going to help you, and it's going to help the team too.
It's a great example of a little bit of humility and accepting your role, but also as you come back to and doing the work and saying this is how they're going to play you. So it's not as much is it a physical change for him, or was it a mindset change? Because both probably come into play.
I couldn't say. I don't know if it was 50-50 or 60-40. For sure both. Because you feel misunderstood. And many international or European players in the NBA, they've had a past already. They maybe played for one of the top European clubs, and in the NBA, nobody cares that much about it. They have to basically start new again, and that's not easy. Some struggle with it because they have a choice, right? They find themselves on an NBA bench with very limited minutes, and they know, if I go back to a EuroLeague club, they're going to love me. I'll be good there. I'll play. And I might even have a domestic passport, which makes me even more valuable. So all these factors, they are in their heads. And then you have a guy who wants to dribble the ball, run pick and rolls, and connect people on the court. And he finds himself in the corner of an NBA team as a catch and shoot guy. Definitely also the physical part, like his physical ability to shoot the ball was for sure his big weakness. We put in the work, definitely, and we trusted our plan. And I wouldn't say we're both very patient people, but it worked. It worked.
Such a great example. Thank you for sharing that. And I just spent some time with the Denver Nuggets in season, and it struck me that player development now is not this separate thing. It's this thing that they try as much to integrate into the daily practice of the players. So pre-practice, post-practice, different groups of players had player development sessions, and the mindset being they only have to come to the office, the gym, one time during the day. And I'm just curious if that's something you've seen as kind of a change in player development over the years.
Definitely. When I shortly talked about my second staff on the Bamberg club, which was led by head coach Trinchieri, the sports director Baezi, who back then they're both in Munich now. But Mr. Baezi sent me to the Spurs back then, and I didn't know why. Like, why should I go to San Antonio? What should I do in the NBA if I'm here? And it became for sure my most important basketball trip because I was so overwhelmed by the importance of player development in the NBA back then. We're talking about what, 2016, 15, 16. I loved it. I was like in heaven. how many players how many players worked and how the structure functioned. I'm not a very well organized person, I'm afraid. Like when it's hard for me to keep everything organized. Who do I bring in when and for how long, and when did I do what? And I learned it there, or I saw it there, and I tried to learn it from them. How this machinery of people coming in for pre-practice, you just mentioned it, how this worked, and how relatively easy it was, and yeah, how easy it was for me to copy it, obviously in a smaller format, but I did copy it for our club. And we started bringing in guys before practice, working for 15 minutes, 20 minutes. Until then, I knew only my individual practice has to be 45 to 60 minutes, full energy, an extra session maybe in the morning, and then in the afternoon you would have a team session. So that's the format that I had known until then. But to bring in everybody just a little bit earlier, but maybe 2 times a week, or at least 1 time a week, sometimes 3 times a week. He doesn't have to come extra. It doesn't kill him from the load. And still, 2 or 3 times 20 minutes is a full hour. And that made so much sense. And I use that till now. And I love that format. It's my favorite format. Of course, we do individual or pre-tactical blocks in the team practices. Every head coach is a little different in this, but we do it now too. It has very high value. You can do a little bit more tactical, but the pre-practice, when the heads are fresh, when the body is fresh, when the gym is still half empty, and you can concentrate on things, you can talk a little bit and connect before the practice, and then go into something that you have prepared. I love it. Connected with the fact that you just mentioned, the 1 time per day, but it's a long unit of basically covering almost everything that we need as athletes. It's a trend that you see almost everywhere, and obviously it's a very functioning one.
It also strikes me how it connects to a pregame warm-up, especially in the NBA. So I'm curious about at your level, your league level, if it's the same, that players get their little individual player development session prior to a game. It's different than the one prior to a practice. It's meant to obviously build comfort and confidence, but that type of idea, does that exist in the EuroLeague as well?
Well, definitely. You see it everywhere. You see it everywhere, and you see it more and more that teams are bringing out their guys early. They work individually and don't just run layup lines like 20 years ago. That for sure. I remember, especially when I used to work with the Nets, that you can really, really take care of the guys who are gonna have low minutes or no minutes at all, right? So you use that time before the game to keep these guys in shape, to keep working with them, knowing that okay, we're on a road trip on the West Coast, and player A, B, and C will not play. But we have the time before the game, and use that time to work them out, or also in a way to keep them in shape, right? Which is different, obviously, to what you mentioned before, but also that is a very important factor.
Well, I love it because it really does help us account for individual differences, which we know is so important in coaching. And you referenced your experience with the Brooklyn Nets, and I want to dive deeper into that because it's fascinating to me. You would go over there essentially once a month. So talk to us about the process of these short periods of time to be able to impact change in players in terms of development. And I'm imagining from what you said, especially shooting, right?
Yes. Like, I think the whole setup happened because that was the only thing possible. I visited the Nets. There was some talk. We were both interested in working together, but I had a contract in Bamberg. a valid one for, I don't know, 1 or 2 more years. The Bamberg team said, no, we won't let you go, but we let you go part-time if that's of any interest. So we started to think outside the box a little bit. So let's say the flexible and modern thinking of this collaboration was okay. What if we try it this way? And Kenny Atkinson was the head coach back then, super high on play development, super high on shooting. He knows basketball Europe too very well because he played and coached over here. Sean Marks was very creative in helping that. Chris Fleming was there, and I had worked with him here in Bamberg. So the setup was perfect. Obviously, it's delicate because you you don't have much time to come in and do something. So I always felt, okay, some players were, let's say, clear to be my candidates, so I had to concentrate on them more than others. But many things were more like, okay, let's figure it out. You know what, Stefan, figure it out, find a way, watch, observe a little bit, and try to figure it out. Sometimes I felt like I had to prepare for. It felt like windows. There's 10 windows, and I prepare for each of them to open. But then obviously only 4 or 5 would open during those 4 days of work because we planned this, but then it didn't happen because the guy got injured. Maybe you can take this guy for 20 or 30 minutes, but then, he was red from his load, so it would be different. So there were constant changes, and what I had planned would constantly change too when I was already there. So these these windows that I felt that I was waiting to open, they were there. I had to be ready to, as soon as one would open, to jump into the window or look into it and do my best for identifying the job in that moment. What does that guy need now?
So it is fascinating, and I'm an outside the box thinker too. So I love that. You're finding a solution. They wanted to work with you. You wanted to work with them. You found a solution. Beautiful. So maybe just reflecting on that, what were the advantages of this setup that maybe we didn't account for originally?
Great questions. The advantages were that both sides had a certain freedom. Okay, we didn't have to agree on a big contract, or it was a free agreement almost, where on one side I felt, okay, if they don't want me anymore, they're not going to invite me, right? They say, no, don't come this time, and the other way around. I think the setup was both sides could only win. Both sides could only win. And it developed in a way that I really liked. It really took everything from me, the concentration and understanding the delicacy of these setups, because each player would have his responsible assistant. So we would be on the court in a group of 3, the player, the responsible coach, and myself. So I tried to help the coach help the player, or do something with the player, but include his coach. That was very important. So you don't exclude that guy, creating a situation of, what, I came here now for 4 days from Europe, and I'm going to show you how it's done now. So that would not happen, would not work, of course, right? So not stepping on anybody's toes, understanding the relation between the two, and then building a relation with both of them to help the responsible coach help the player. That was a great challenge.
Well, and it speaks to something you've said before, which is what you want to be consciously invisible and be in the background more. And that's really the benefit. I love that phrasing. Can you talk a little bit about that?
I think it's connected with if you've gotten over yourself. If you've reached a point in your profession where it's not important to you because you know that you know what you're talking about, then I think you need it less, and when you're not scared of I don't know, making a player angry, or when you're not scared of making a mistake or something like that. If you see a player work with a coach, I think the goal should be, if you watch from outside, let's say it's an individual workout of whatever kind, the goal should not be that after the practice, you say, wow, this coach is great. You should say the player is great. What a great player. He did great stuff. That should be the goal. And that's my goal. Like to bring him somewhere where the workout is great because he's doing great things. Not because, oh wow, this trainer, he's got great moves. So this trainer knows how to shoot. Of course, we have to give the player the feeling of we know what we're talking about and we can demonstrate stuff. Of course, it's important. But the practice or the workout, it can never be about the coach. It must be about the player. It sounds simple, but I see so many out there, and I respect everybody. I watch almost everybody I can watch on Instagram or wherever, because each skills coach out there knows something or has something that is interesting, or you can copy or learn from him. But I think the general idea of the importance of who's important in that constellation, it should always be the player.
Absolutely, and love that example that you just gave. And we mentioned pre-practice working with players, and then you mentioned being a part of practice. So can you give us some examples of when you do take over parts of practice?
Mostly it's the earlier part in team practices. It was like that with almost all head coaches that I've worked for, with Coach Fleming for sure, Trinchieri for sure. He would always give me 6 minutes. He called it 6 and 6. So I would have one group, let it be the bigs first, and the others would be with the athletic coach for 6 minutes. They would do some physical activation, for example, and then we would switch it, or it could be team white and then for 6 minutes, and then team red. So two groups, very similar with Coach Fleming, where I would mostly take the guards or the perimeter players, and the bigs would be with Coach Volkman. Now with Coach Emil, it's similar. I can decide a little bit more. So usually he leaves it up to me what to do, or he says, well, I want this and that and that. But how you do it, I don't care. So I design that. What I do in addition for the current team is whenever we shoot during practice, I take over again. So we have short shooting windows of 3 to 5 minutes that we usually do twice per team practice. And then there's again tasks, which they can be divided again, or if one group does something very, very intense, and the bigs are doing stuff with Coach Volkman again, or with our other assistant. Or I take all of them and they pair up and they have to fulfill something. What I also do is when they do not have pre-practice, they have to fulfill some shooting task, a short shooting package that they already know most of the times, and they get it by text message, and they can come in whenever they want, but before the team practice starts, they must have done it.
I love it, and I want to get into shooting with you, of course, because one of the fascinating things I know you've talked about more in depth than I've ever heard anyone talk about is nail length. And when I first saw it, I was like, okay, what is he going to talk about here? And it literally is the length of their nails. So talk a little bit about that.
I think you referred to the story with Karis LeVert.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not that I come in and I check guys' fingernails every day. Really not.
I didn't think so.
But I think it is important. I truly believe in it. If the nails are extremely long, then that last part of your fingertips is not going to be used. It's just a fact, right? If you can control the ball until the very end of your finger, there's going to be, I don't know, 5% more length that's used from your release line, or I don't know, 2%. I've never measured it, but for sure it's going to be more, and more is better. And so I do believe it is important. I played professional basketball too. It was very important for me how my nails were and how the ball felt.
I love it. It was such a great example of a micro detail that does matter. And I agree with you in that sense, especially having some daughters now, to be able to get them to understand to keep their nails cut short. And we used to cut our nails. We used to always talk about that within a team because people would get scratched, of course, if you had long nails. But this connects even better for a player. Other things that matter to you in terms of shooting that you could share with us? I mean, we already mentioned individual differences, and it's safe to say that everyone functions differently as a shooter. So can you talk about the other things that really matter to you in terms of shooting?
I like the number 3, and I, very generally spoken, look at three things. The first are the feet. I like to look at the bottom, and I picked that up from Holger Geschwindner, who's the famous individual coach of Dirk Nowitzki, and he would talk about the feet a lot. I thought about it a lot. Like we all look at the fingers and the follow through, and is it long or not, and what does the elbow do? But he was the first guy that I met who talked about the feet. I picked that up, and 99% of the players that I work with, I start with the feet. I look at the feet. How does he stand? Right? How does he, when he catches the ball, what are the feet doing? Is he straight above his feet, or is he already in a cramped up position where he's only on the forefoot because somebody told him, yeah, get ready quickly and, triple threat or stuff like that? Again, 9 of 10 times I start checking the feet, and everything that builds up, like the base of a house. If the foundation is a good base, then everything above will be relatively stable. And more stability is more consistency, and that's what we all want, right? I like to use their shoe size. So if you have a 15, well, use the 15 at least for a while, and don't be only on a 6 or a 7 all the time. And these 4-foot dominant players, you see them everywhere. And of course, we leave the ground through our forefoot and the toes. But if we move for 4 quarters on our toes, we catch it on the toes, and from that position we go up. It's going to be very, very hard. I'm not saying wrong. Because there'll be shots where we have to pop only from our forefoot. It has to go very quick. Everything that goes backwards, step backs, usually are more on our forefoot. Otherwise, we would fall back, right? Than others. But at some point, I love a natural stance. Let's be, at least for a moment, naturally on our or above our feet. And I sometimes I call it just try to find your feet. Find your feet. Use your 15.
It's a great example of the importance of feet. And I'm just curious then, if you were starting from a youth level, is there one type of footwork that you feel is the best one to start with? Because we know as they evolve, I mean, differential footwork is positive for them, but when they start with, is there one footwork that you value?
No, I hardly use right or wrong, or this is the best, and don't do this.
Love it.
Actually never ever, because there's so many differences. I have to know them, of course, or if I see somebody struggle, then I do come in and say, try this or try that, or maybe let's add, instead of jump stopping everything, let's add a 1-2 when you curl to add some balance. Of course, I have a certain belief, which is 9 of 10 times easier. Like, I believe in easier or harder, but not in right or wrong, for sure not. So these youngsters, first, you're still able to throw a lot of seeds around them, and if you have patience, some will grow, right? Some not, but some will grow. So you can try a lot, and they might develop their most functional techniques. With PJ Tucker, we did that. He would not want to stop right left, and so he called it drag step. So he would just, moving left, he would place his left foot and then just drag his right foot into the, for him, correct stance, and it was all good. And so why should I take it away from him or tell him that is wrong? So that's foot balance, or foot stability, or foot balance. That's usually part one for me. Second is for sure the grip and the release. What does the hand do? What does the release line do? How is the guy built, right? Does he have a huge chest like Patrick Miller, our point guard, or Retino Vasohan from Asvel? These guys with the pectoralis like this, they can't bring their elbow in, and I have to understand that. And if I tell them, well, elbow in because we think it's correct, then I am wrong, because he just can't. There's no room. If they have a biceps like that and a chest muscle like this, they will never be able to look straight at the basket and bring the elbow in. Impossible. So I have to understand that he will have to stand like this, right? Be a little turned in order to have a straight release line. I do believe in that, and I do believe a lot in how is the hand on the ball? Because it's the last part of our body that touches the ball before the ball flies out. Then we are again back to the fingertips, right? So how do I hold it? Is my hand small and soft, or is it dominant? Does it touch a lot of the ball, or only half of it? Do I use my fingers? Do I use my hand to a high potential, or only half of it? I like to call it upper unit. So the arm and the hand, what do they do? So that's important to me. That'll be the second part. And the third is the overall timing. Right? How do the most delicate one, right? The hardest one. How do the body parts of my player play together? How's the timing? Does he start with the ball? Does he get under the ball before he starts extending? How does he extend? Everything at once? You know, these guys who they put so much energy in and they move everything at once, right? They never extend sequentially, like biomechanics teach us, which is an optimal acceleration. So you have these guys who they work so hard and the ball never flies out because the timing is not optimal. Again, I'm not saying wrong. It's not optimal. And then you have these effortless guys, and we tend to say, "Oh, what a natural shooter!" Yeah, but they are perfect. They are perfect in the timing of extending and using their body parts, their levers, right? Like Lillard, like Curry, of course, right? You see them extend sequentially. The legs, the trunk, the elbow, the hand, everything goes quickly, but it's not at the same time. And then I come back to biomechanics, which is just the truth, right? They count for everyone. Every body is different. One is short and strong, the other is long and maybe a little weaker, but the biomechanics count for everybody.
I think it's incredible examples of accounting for individual differences and not predetermining what someone needs to learn based on what you've read or what you've learned through the years. We have to look at each individual separately, don't we, in terms of evaluating what can be optimal for them.
For sure. And it's a constant fight for me that I love to fight. After my first year with the Nets, Kenny Atkinson asked me to do an analysis, deep dive about shooting. So analyze shooting, bring in science. How should we analyze it? How should we teach it? And it was great because that was hard for me to get organized, right? And I prepared a presentation that brought scientific evidence. Still, when we talked about it and when I presented it, and then we talked about it, I felt the huge desire of putting things into boxes. Like, I think every good shooter jumps forward, or every good shooter has a rotation. I think many good shooters jump a little forward, especially when the distance is very long, but not on every shot. Or every good shooter should have a one motion shot. Well, what about all these hang shooters who have to fade away and get a shot off in 2-point area? You see them less and less, but they're still there. I think it's a waste of time to categorize all the time and label he's this, he's that, because it changes all the time. But again, this coming back to trying to analyze everything and categorize, I don't think it's possible. And I don't think it makes much sense either.
I couldn't agree more. I just think it's such a pointless waste of time. And I understand, like, as sport federations and different things, they need to create these kind of these boxes, as to use your words, kind of to give people guidelines. But learning is so nonlinear that there's no way we could ever box it in that way. And I absolutely couldn't agree more. Listen, another thing I really enjoyed learning and hearing your insights, and I want to dive deeper on, is this concept of this intersection between psychology and player development or coaching, and particularly your focus on emotional regulation. Can you talk to us about the importance of this and then some of the things that you've learned to be able to apply?
I can come with an example from last Saturday. We had a game on the road with the Bamberg team, a very important one against a good opponent who is in a very good phase now. And we came from game the week or the Monday before, where we shot the ball very bad. And I think mostly, not only for me, but for many players, the the shooting is a mentally very challenging topic, right? So we had shot the ball well on Monday. We came back to this road game on Saturday. In the first quarter, we play well. We create a lot of open threes, and we made, I think, 1 of 10 or 1 of 11. So with the shooting being my responsibility and my demand of myself to lead them in this, it was again a delicate situation, because inside I was angry and frustrated because nobody could make a shot. But still, it was only the first quarter. So I had to hold myself back, my own emotions, in order to control their emotions. Because what if they see me, the guy who talks to them about shooting every day? What if they see me lose it and get angry and kick a chair or something? They have to see me as their leader in this topic, believing in them. And also, there's the trust again, and the patience in this situation. I tried to choose my words in the first break well, just calming guys down and saying very simple things, but they need to hear it. I do believe a lot in the right choice of words. Things like, let it fly, guys. Great misses. Instead of, yeah, keep shooting. We're not going to miss forever. Oh, there's the word miss again, right? So I usually in these situations, I choose a lot of makes ahead of us. There's a lot of makes coming up, stuff like that. They have to hear makes and not misses. I believe in that a lot. And it worked well, not only because of that, but also because of that. They have to see me calm. They have to see me believing. They have to see patience, and they have to hear it too.
That's such a brilliant example, by the way. Great misses. Because I say it to kids all the time. Great effort making a mistake. And they to acknowledge the fact that mistakes are necessary for learning, and they're not actually this bad thing. And misses are realities, aren't they? So you're normalizing it.
When I worked with Maxi Kleber, he would be so focused on the stuff he does not do well. There's many others who talk and think about the mistakes. And coming back to shooting, we've had another player last year who would come out, sub down, and say, I can't make a shot. I cannot make a shot. And I looked at the stats, and he was 0 for 1, 0 for 1. I'm like, look, you missed one. So what sample size is that? It's 0 for 1 or 1 for 1 is almost luck, you know. So making them understand. Look, we play basketball, and 9 of 10 basketball players miss more often than they make it. That's just the game we play, and we will not be able to change it. You won't. So you can be angry at yourself or try to kill yourself with it every day, but it's not going to change. We miss it more than we make it. Usually that opens their eyes a little bit. Oh, yeah, it's true. So maybe I'm not that bad. And turning the page over and talk about the makes. Let's talk about makes and not about the misses all the time. It's like before a game. You can say, hey, guys, we have to be alert. This team is really dangerous. Or we can say, hey, let's not underestimate them. They're not that bad. Okay, so what sticks? The same like, hey, let's not be lazy on defense. Oh, so you hear lazy, you hear underestimate, you hear this and that. Same with shooting, same with individual situations. I can come in and say, this is wrong, that is wrong. We have to work on the elbow. It's not straight. Or I can come from the other side and say, hey, you're making a lot of shots. Your feel for the ball is great. What if we improve the timing of your shot a little bit? You could make it easier. It's not wrong, but I can help you with getting it off easier. That's totally different. And these small moments of a right or wrong choice of words, they can change everything.
Well, I love that. If you don't take away anything from this podcast other than the fact that, again, don't focus on what's wrong. Focus on it's not optimal and we can improve it, or what can be more optimal in terms of these things. So that's great. And another thing, it just kind of connected with me is that when I'm working with shooters, one of the hardest things to self-discipline yourself as a coach is to not just give them feedback on when they miss. right? Like it's, oh, you should have lifted the ball more or hold your follow through or something like that. It's easy to give feedback on a miss, but it's also to be able to balance that feedback on misses and makes, but also to gradually reduce the amount of feedback and let them experience it for themselves.
I think we can help ourselves with, okay, what are we working on in this moment? Is it a certain is it the foot balance, or is it the timing of the shot, or is it the grip? So let's look at that only, and not, let's talk about makes later, and we can help them a lot with that. We can help them a lot. Let I don't care. I usually say in this situation, I don't care if you miss everything now. Let's just do this. Let's just talk about the grip, if I want to talk about the grip. Okay, spread the fingers a little bit more so you can have a long release line and guide that ball along. If you make it or not, I don't even comment it. The term of a good miss comes from Brian Roberts, who was a very, very important player here for Bamberg in the early 2010s, and he made it to the NBA from here, and he would say, "Oh, that's a good miss," and we started to like it, and I use it more and more. The good misses, because sometimes we do everything right on a shot, and the ball still doesn't go in. So I have the confidence to say that to players.
I love that. Zico Coronel, who was on the podcast a long time ago, a New Zealand coach in Japan now, used to call it a coach clap. That as soon as they're shooting the ball, you're already clapping regardless of outcome, because it was the right shot, the right decision, and obviously a good shot for our team. Some level of emotion is needed, so they can't be robots. So talk to us. How do we help players, especially younger players, learn to balance their emotions?
I listened to a podcast of a mental performance coach, and I think he's in baseball, and he said, play or use your emotions, but don't play emotionally. I think that's a big difference, right? So the excitement, the nervousness in before the game or in a game is just a sign of our bodies getting ready for what we do. Emotionally would be the anger against ourselves after a miss or stuff like that. So that's two parts, and at least for my head, that helps. Everything else is very individual. Um, we have a very young player here who had a very difficult start to the season. We were looking for somebody else, and then we contract, and then we gave him another short contract, and he's still with us. He's a 5-man who played in a lower league last year, and we use him more and more as a pick and pop 5 because he shoots it very well, and he did. He's doing a more like a better and better job every week by keeping shooting, and he was only 2 for 10 this last game that I just talked about a couple of minutes ago. And what I loved about it was that he kept shooting. What everybody says, keep shooting, but it is hard when you're out there and your team gives you the ball and you miss, and then you miss again, and then you miss again, and we are all tempted to, next time I'm gonna fake and drive it. But there's so much space, and he did a great job being mentally strong or emotionally calm, whatever it is, to keep shooting, and that's what we wanted. And he made one very important three late. So great job. He surprised us with his emotional mental strength. But again, that is very individual. And in for these cases, I also like to use the consultation of experts. I also cooperate with Rainer Meisterjan from Cortex Performance, who's a mental performance coach. It's good to have somebody in addition who can help with that, who can maybe even start working with a player if there's the time capacity, the potential to do that.
Coach, I mean, your experiences are tremendous, lifelong learner, had an opportunity to work with elite players from all over the world. So just curious, some of the experiences and some of the learning that you could help us understand how to be better coaches from your experiences.
I think it comes back to, and let's say if it's an NBA player who wants me to come over and work with him, the first is identifying the job. In what situation is he in, and how can I help him? What does he need now? and that needs preparation. I need to watch film. I need to talk to him, to his agent, to his family, maybe even to his former coaches. Get as much information as I can to tailor a custom workout for him, to be able to choose the right words, to be able to choose the right exercises, be flexible to adjust, but identifying that to be done in those 3 or 4 days that I have him, or even less, that can help him. And that's usually the key. Connect well, keep him as the driver of the car. He's the most important guy. I just have the map, okay, and I might suggest a certain way, but he's driving. I'm just there for him. He's the main person, and that's what always helped me. That works for me.
Tremendous stuff. Thank you so much for sharing the game with us. So many lessons and so many insights. So super appreciate you. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.